Yo, what's going on, everybody? You are now watching Tell the Story Doc on All of Life TV, and today I am just blessed because I think we had the coolest pastor on the planet on the podcast today. And y'all know I like having these conversations with friends and just people who I've seen all over. And I am blessed and excited to welcome Pastor Brandon Watts.
Listen, man, when you said the coolest pastor, I was like, man, this brother's talking about himself, man. It's good to be on with you, Byron. Real good to be on with you, bro.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So I always start with some random occurrence. So I got two for you. Here we go.
Okay.
Man, when I first felt the call to church planting, you consume so much content, and I'm living in Florida, and I was a regular listener to the Epiphany podcast, the sermon podcast, and one Sunday I'm driving from Miami to Daytona Beach, and Pastor E is not preaching that day. Brandon Watts is preaching that day.
Oh, wow.
And I listened to the sermon. I wish I could tell you what it was about. I don't remember what it was about. But I listened to the sermon, and I immediately sent you a DM on Twitter and was like, bro, this message really blessed me. Now, here's the thing that really got me, though. When I sent you the DM, you DM me back like in a few hours. And I have had a lot of interactions with superstar pastors over time that have kind of disappointed me. So I was blown away because at that moment, I was nowhere close to being a pastor. And or maybe I was a little close, but I did not expect for you to send me a DM back that quickly. So shout out to you for actually checking your DMs.
Oh man, you know what? I'm so not good with that. So that's so encouraging to hear. I'm definitely not a superstar pastor in any form or fashion. I have been privileged to we'll get into it, man. But I've been privileged to come up under Dr. Eric Mason, which you just mentioned, and I would say is just one of the greatest communicators, pastors. I think in terms of church planning, I don't think in the inner city there is no greater mind than his. I'm a little biased, but I really do. I think the world of him. And so if you heard anything from me, I probably stole it from him.
Right. We all do that until we can grow in our own voice. We do it.
That's right. That's right.
The second thing I want to bring up is I don't know if you can see my Evernote. Right here, this says How to Launch an Urban Church by Brandon Watts. You did this presentation at Thriving Frequency in, what year was this?
Wow.
I don't remember what year it was. And again, man, I walked up to you right after the presentation, and I said, man, that really blessed me. And I love to get your presentation. And you was like, oh, yeah, I'll send it to you. And you said, Gabe, can you make sure that he gets your get the presentation? And Gabe sent it to me right away. And I was like, man, that's really dope. Like, because there are a lot of guys in circles that we're in that communication doesn't happen that smoothly. So I was really blown away and impressed by that.
Yeah. You know, Byron, I really have been I've been fortunate to have some really, really great heroes that I've seen from afar and then gotten close, and I've had the same interactions that you're talking about. I've had those same interactions, and I'm always blown away. Like, man, these guys are busy. These guys are doing a bunch of stuff. There's no way they have time. And they, the guys that I interacted with have always made time. And I feel like that is, man, that's the goal, man. We're all here trying to help each other, trying to figure it out. Church planting ain't easy. Pastoring ain't easy. Especially if you add on doing so in the urban context. It's a lot of stuff going on, man, that's just very difficult to navigate through. And so the more resources, the more people, the more support, man, that we have for each other, man, that's what it's about. So, man, that's encouraging to hear, man. Really encouraging.
It really did bless me. And I don't just say that. I don't take that lightly. I don't just throw that around in that way. And one of the reasons why, if I can explain for a second, is like, if you've ever been to Thriving, I'm glad Thriving's coming back, by the way. Shout out to Pastor E and Epiphany and all that. Yeah. But if you've ever been, if you're not from the tri-state area up top, like, it can be a little bit intimidating because, like, I walked in there, everybody had Timbs on and sneakers and, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm from North Carolina. I've been in Florida for the last 17 years. At the time, I was living in Memphis, and I'm a country boy. Like I'm down south country boy, and I walk up there and everybody's like fitted on, book bag, like everybody talking like this.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like,
it's aggressive. It's aggressive.
This ain't me. Like I'm playing an urban church, but this is not. I don't feel that comfortable. So to be able to have that interaction with you was just good, man. So I don't want to waste a lot of time on that, but I did want to highlight that.
That's what's up, man.
I want people to know that you are a person who is hospitable and welcoming people with open arms, man. So
try to be,
man. Tell the people about who Brandon Watts is, man. This is Tell the Story Doc. What are the important parts of your story? What's the story you feel like God has been crafting for you in this, however many years of life?
Man, first, let me just say that I am genuinely honored to be talking with you today. The privilege and joy is all mine. Your reputation precedes you. And man, I love what you're doing. We had a quick chat before we started recording, but I told Byron I wanted to save some of my pleasantries, honestly, for the platform. I wanted you guys to hear just how proud I am. We don't really know each other that well. We'll fix that, but I love how you're moving, man. And I just, I want to make sure that goes on record. All of you guys who are listening and tuning in today, this brother is doing it, and he's ambidextrous. I think that's the thing. God has created us with so much, so many giftings, and sometimes we die and we've only exhausted one gifting. And God is like, man, I'm a God that is ambidextrous myself, which is why we have so many names for him, right? Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Sikkenu, or Sikkenu, however you want to say that. I found that the more theologically astute like to say Sikkenu, but the church folks say Sikkenu. But yeah, we have all of these names for God because he's all of that to us. And what I love about this platform is that you're providing one avenue, but this is just one piece of who you are, man. So shout out to you, man. Despise not the days of small beginnings. Keep running well. And I think the Lord will just continue. My hope and prayer is that the Lord continues to add to this platform and other platforms that you're moving in, making space for you, man. But yeah, man, I have, I am currently privileged and honored to be the lead pastor here at Epiphany Church here in Brooklyn, New York. We're right on Atlantic Avenue, 4 blocks from Barclays Center, intentionally in this neighborhood, intentionally in this city, because, we really do believe we exist to join Jesus and his mission to redeem our city. And that's not hyperbole, man. I genuinely love Jesus and believe that the gospel is true. And if that is the case, I think it saves people. And we've seen that, man. We're in a bit of a season of revival and we're rejoicing in it right now. But man, the story that we're seeing unfold now is years of preparation and years of prayers and years of working with our team, trying to build and rethink and be different and be innovative. And so the story for me starts a little bit further back. I am 43 now. Grew up in North Carolina, so I'm a Southern boy my own self. Spent a lot of time in North Carolina, born in Virginia.
What part of North Carolina?
So I was in Jacksonville because my father was in the military. Yeah. So he's in the military. So I was born in Virginia, lived in North Carolina, moved to Hawaii for a little bit, which I don't remember. But he retired when I was 13 in Jersey. So I'm like from 13 on, I'm Northeast. Been married now for 21 years to my beautiful wife, Ty. I have 2 boys. One is 20. The other one next month will be 18. And so that's a little bit of the story with the family and kind of where we are now. We started going to Epiphany Fellowship in 2010. I don't know if you want to go right into church planting or should I pause here?
No, it's good.
Yeah, so we planted, we started going to Epiphany Fellowship in 2010, had no aspirations, no desires to plant any church. We were detoxing from a previous church we were a part of that just wasn't healthy for us. We found our way out of that church. We found our way to Epiphany, which is so interesting, man. The story that you shared about the DMs is actually how I got to Epiphany Fellowship in Philly, because I was kind of burnt out, man, with specifically Black church, and there was a lot of immaturity in my heart. So I'm not there now, but I'm expressing where I was at that time. At the beginning of 2010, really burnt out with Black church. Started listening to podcasts at that time, and man, found a podcast from Matt Chandler, and was just listening. It was like, man, this is different. This is something I ain't heard before. And at the same time, a friend, I just gave my life to the Lord because a friend shared the gospel with me in the parking lot of the church. God saved me. I had no discipleship. I did not have healthy church that I was a part of. And then I ended up in Epiphany Fellowship because I heard Matt Chandler was preaching there. I DM'd him and just simply said, hey, where is this at? And he sent back the address in the DM. And I went that Sunday. And I just never left, man. I never left because of how healthy the church was, healthy on marriages, healthy on singles, healthy with the gospel. And so I was just there, man, serving in the kids ministry, doing all I started to get discipled a little bit more by Dr. Mason, which is where the idea of church planting crystallized, because the church in Philly is a very open hand model when it comes to leaders. I mean, they've sent some really, really strong leaders out. And at that time, Dr. Mason was really heavy on, man, we got to be a church that is missional, that sends people out, is how the gospel flourishes. And he was discipling us in that way. And it was becoming common language and second nature to us to release. And I was like, man, I thought churches, the metric for a successful church was getting people in. He's like, no, the metric of a healthy church is getting people out. Like, let's be on mission here. Let's disciple people and get them out so that we can make other disciples. And so we started to crystallize the idea of church planting. Dr. Mason was very clear. You need to be spiritually fathered. You're not ready. You need some time. And so in 2013, I came on staff. I'm leaving a lot out, but I came on staff, left my corporate America job, which by God's grace, I was moving up the corporate ladder and making some real money. And then the Lord was like, yeah, that's not the goal though. So I ended up leaving that job, and they put me in a position that I had to leave. So I left. It was either move down south and take this promotion, and I knew that wasn't the Lord, or leave. And so I left, raised some support for 2 years, my salary, downgraded. We moved into, a small, 2-bedroom apartment in Philly. And from there, the rest is history, man. I got heavily discipled. I got to sit in the room. I wasn't an elder, so I didn't have a voice, but I got to sit in the elders' rooms. I got to see how budgets were created. I got to see how correction and church discipline happened. I traveled with Dr. Mason. At that time, I was his assistant. And so I did a lot, with him. And I learned. And then, man, May of 2015, they kicked me out, man, sent me to New York. And here we are, man.
Yeah. Well, bro, man, there's so much there. And I get excited thinking about a lot of this stuff. So the first thing I want to hit on is this. Like, you moved into this world of urban church, discipleship, all of that as a grown man with a wife, and there's so many of us that when we start on this walk, we are a little less mature, right? Like, what was that like walking into this space, and also this new season of life that kind of brought you into ministry? Like, what was that like, already being married and then having children? I'm guessing your oldest is 20. So, you already had kids during this time. Yeah. What was that whole thing like?
Yeah, it was, the time was right, man. It reminds me of that scripture, in the fullness of time, God sent his son. He sent him at a specific time, a specific moment when the gospel could flourish in a way that it possibly wouldn't have if he sent him a century before. Right. And so for me, I think the timing was right, man. We had a ton of support. We have a ton of family support. Also, my kids were young, but they weren't dependent young. Like, they weren't toddlers at that time. By that time, we already came in, to the church and in this world of church planting. Our kids were already in middle school, a little bit more self-dependent. And yeah, my wife, the story's long, man, here, but my wife, at the same time that I got saved, I got saved at the age of 28. Um, and my wife at the same time was, the Lord was wooing her heart. Even though we were born and raised in church, the Lord was wooing her heart in a different way. And so we both, like, this missional mindset change. We were living in the suburbs, bro. And the Lord was calling us to the inner city. We sold our house because we were like, man, this is what the Lord's calling us to give our life to. And he doesn't want us driving in from the suburbs to do so. He wants us to live here. So we moved in, man, to North Philly. Like, if you know anything about Philly, that's a rough part. We moved into North Philly, but we felt like we were on mission, man. It was so good for our marriage. Epiphany Fellowship. I don't know how much you know, Byron, about the church, but it was so healthy for our marriage. The husbands, the wives, I've never seen anything like it. It was hyper focused on being good men and being good husbands. And so because of that, I think all of that was a perfect storm for church planning in that time. And then again, the level of support we had from Dr. Mason and then beyond, some of the networks and stuff we were a part of, the support we had was so helpful that it honestly, it made the entire process seamless, even as a grown man.
Man, I love that. This is good for me. I need to hear stories like this, and I think there are guys and families and women who need to hear stories like this because it seems like there's a formula for a lot of people, and it's like you go to Bible college, you go to seminary, you sit under a pastor at a larger church, and then you plant at 25.
Yeah.
You didn't even get saved until you was 28. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, I'm a grown man. Like, I got bills, I got a 401k, I got kids, I have a house in the suburbs, and this is how I know God is moving and he's truly in this.
Yeah.
Because all in all, I don't really have to do this outside of the fact that God is pulling my heart in this direction. I just think it means a lot. I won't say it means a lot more. What I will say is, I think there are a lot of people who feel like unless you are in that formula, or in that pipeline for the formula, then this isn't the space for you.
Yeah.
And really and truly, God is using men and women, all ages, all backgrounds, all experience, to see churches being planted and leadership happening and all of that, man. So that's amazing.
It's the disciples, right? That's not cookie cutter. That's a bunch of different type of people, right? Bunch of different type of all types of backgrounds, from fishermen to doctors. And so I think we've become a bit cultish in how the church planning has kind of like shaped up. It has become this cookie cutter formula that it has to work this way, and it's just not how God works. I think there's a playbook, right? There is a playbook that that most church planners have to go through. I do believe like there are some core things that you should have to be a church planner. Number one, you should be being sent from a church. I really believe that. I think that's biblical. I think that's Paul and Barnabas being sent, Acts 13, from the Antioch church. I think it's biblical to come from a church, and the church has released you. You've served at that church. There possibly people are going with you, which is our story. But other than some of the core things, like you should know Jesus, you should come from a church. Other than those things, I think God, that's the playbook. But there's a reason a quarterback can call audibles. The quarterback calls, and I think God calls audibles on some of our lives, and our story won't be the same, and our trajectory towards starting a church, taking over a church, whatever it is, transitioning to church, they're not always the same. And the moment we look down on someone else's journey because it wasn't the way we thought it was, is the moment I start to think this is a bit cultish. And it's a bit dangerous as well, man. So I want to celebrate however anybody gets to the path of of pastoring. It's not an easy job, man, but you know, as long as again that support is there from some type of local church, there is correction, there is someone who can speak in, like as long as those things are there, man, I think God uses a bunch of different type of people to do so.
Yeah, that's good. Another thing I picked up on as you were talking, and in our, I don't even know what our circle is, but like kind of in our circle, everybody knows like Dr. Mason is the bishop, right? Like he plays that role in a sense. But for you and for, some of the other guys been on this podcast who actually have been there with him, he's either your spiritual father, your spiritual grandfather, however that breaks down or whatever. I see how important that is. And I think a lot of men and pastors don't get that. And it hurts them in a sense whenever they are out leading by themselves.
Absolutely.
Like, can you speak to how important that spiritual fathering was and is? Because I believe you still have a good relationship with them. I hear about y'all's calls and all that stuff. So what is that like? How important is spiritual fathering in this world?
It's huge, man. It's Paul with Timothy. It is not only is it biblical, but I think it's healthy. And it's not just healthy at the start of a church. But bro, I had zero clue how to start a church. I had no ideas. I wasn't like, my father was a minister, but he was always a minister on staff somewhere. I had no clue how to do any of this stuff. And it took mentoring and discipleship through Dr. Mason to teach me. Man, I don't know how to run a 501c3. I don't know how to put together a budget. I don't know how to raise up other leaders. I don't know how to preach every week. I have no clue how to do this stuff. And what a spiritual father does is, for me, has been that safety net, which is saying, I'm going to train you. I'm going to show you. Bro, I would preach, Byron, no lie, man. I would preach at the church in Philly on a Sunday. That Monday or maybe that Tuesday, I would have my meeting with Dr. Mason and he would go over everything that could have been stronger. That's teaching you how to. And then the church, bro, our churches have to be places where we allow people to develop. So it's not just the spiritual father, it's the church that you come from that allows you to preach bad sermons and says you'll get it right next week. We have to have a place that's conducive for that. But that's just the beginning. I also think, Byron, and if I don't say anything else of importance, I want to be clear here. I think having a spiritual covering when you are pastoring for a while is extremely important, because it is in those seasons where I think we start to get blind to things that are dysfunctional, and it takes a spiritual covering or oversight to actually call you out. I still can get disciplined. Dr. Mason still can call me and say, well, what did you say? Or why did you say that? Bro, I've posted things before while I was here. And he's like, what is that? You should think differently about that. That covering. And then if I ever fell into sin, which I have a question for you later, whenever you got time here. But if I ever fell into sin, it is a spiritual father that walks in and corrects and nurtures and restores. And I just don't, I don't know how. I just personally don't know. And I know guys. And so if you're out here and you're like, man, I don't have that. I don't have that. I would just say, man, you really need to look for that. And we have to invite people in to be that in our lives, because it is really important, man. We can't be out here and be rogue. Church planting is hard. Spiritual warfare is real. Ephesians 5 is real. And you just need a spiritual covering, man. Somebody that knows you and you've invited in, and you can hear them correct you without you getting offended.
Yeah. I've heard a little debate about that. I'd like to hear what you think. Some people say there aren't enough men looking to do that work of being a spiritual father. And then other people would say, no, there are young men who are just, how can I say this? They hold a little bit of arrogance, and they have a little more information that people had in the past, and they think they can do it themselves. Like, in your view, what do you think it is? Is it that we just don't have enough people who believe in this and are actually doing this? Or is there just like a lot more young people just trying to do it themselves? Or this might be another option. There's just a lot more people pursuing this now, and maybe they're just less, like the load is already like full, right? So I can't pursue Dr. Mason to be my spiritual father. He's fathering the men who are in his house or have come from his house, right? So I should be pursuing someone who is in the house that I am in, or someone who I'm following. So, like, give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, a couple things. Number one, I do think it works best when it is the analogy you used, in the house that you're already in. It does, but I do think that there are some places and parts of the world, the country, that you just don't have that access. I still think you should be a part of a gospel loving, Bible believing church. But I do think that there are spiritual coverings and spiritual fathers that you can seek from the outside that are not a part of your immediate circle. So I just want to put that out there. Yeah, I think if you're too arrogant to look for spiritual coverings, you should not plant a church. You should not plant a church. Timothy was not arrogant, and he was an amazing elder at the Ephesus church. He was not too arrogant to hear from Paul. And Paul, Paul was, I love discipleship because discipleship isn't all theology, right? There's a point where Paul is like, man, don't drink the water. It's not good for your stomach, man. Drink a little bit of wine, right? What is he doing? Man, he's caring for him physically. That's a physical. There's a point where Paul is like, man, I remember, your grandmother Lois, and like he's now like intimate. I remember our tears. Like that's an intimate, part of spiritual fathering or discipleship or spiritual covering. And so I would just say, I hope that there are men, like older, more mature, further along men that are open to younger guys coming up under their umbrella if they have the bandwidth at the time. And then I do hope that there are younger guys that are seeking that because you need it. I have an idea of why the culture of church planting has shifted a bit from that. But if I could, I would pose it to you as a question. Okay, here's the question I would ask you. In terms of networks, and which I think you're a part of a network, in terms of networks versus denominations, let me set the question up. If you look back, 20 years ago, especially in Black culture, denominations was it. We knew nothing of networks. The rise of networks started to happen. You've had some really strong networks that came up, and we were privileged to be a part of and are part of some really strong networks. But then you have these networks that now have in the church planting world replaced denominations. So my question to you is, do you think it was a healthy transition over the last 20 years, maybe 15 years? Over the last 15 years, do you think it was a healthy transition in the church planting world to move so quickly from denominations to networks?
Wow, that's a big. I don't know if I've spent that much time thinking of it in that way. I know I've had some conversations about my thoughts on networks and denominations and and where we stand on all of those things. But what I will say is, when you're talking about that work of men and women being able to see the life of a person, to affirm the gifts of a person, to affirm the transformation of that person. When I grew up in a missionary Baptist church, and those people can speak more to that than anybody else.
Of course.
Like, and I grew up going to like the youth events that were held by the denomination and the oratorical contest that was run by the denomination. So you meet all of these pastors and you meet all of these clergy people and all of that, and they're able to affirm you in a way that maybe the people from seminary can't, because all they know is what you've been able to produce. They don't actually know your life. And I think both networks and denominations have grown more into the what can you produce and not who are you as a person.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And that happens because you are trying to make something that's global be local instead of taking something that's local and multiplying it, right? So like the guy who is overseeing my church planting process might be 4 states away. He may know nothing about my neighborhood. He may know nothing about my context. He may know nothing about the people who I serve. And yet this is the person overseeing the process. Whereas if it was, and when you say denominations, honestly, I'm thinking back to historically Black denominations.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Everybody knows each other. Like, whoever's your bishop, you know him. Like, not just, oh yeah, such and such. Like, no. You know his church. You know the people. You might got a cousin or a brother, somebody. You know these people. And as we've kind of exited that world and moved into these bigger networks and even these bigger denominations, I've kind of yearned to kind of move back to those spaces. Like a couple years ago, my wife and I were considering joining. I won't say the network or the denomination, but we were considering joining a historically Black denomination. And we were just like, hey, we know these people. And even though we don't do church like them, we know them and they know us. And they can understand things about our lives that this person who I only see once a year will never understand. So to wrap it up, I would just say maybe we should reconsider, whether us moving out of those spaces was really what we're supposed to be doing long term. Because I also think some of us who have learned a lot more outside of those spaces can bless the people in those spaces as they're trying to think on how to be innovative, how to be more missional, how can we change some of the models of our churches and all of that. So I don't know if I spoke directly to.
No, it's good, man. But, no, it's good. I wanted to hear it. Thoughts go. Man, I wanted to hear it because I've been having this conversation a lot lately, and to be clear and honest, like we are a part of an amazing network. We're a part of Orchard Group, which is an amazing network. Outside of Dr. Mason, I think Brent Storms, which is the president, I've learned. So he's a mentor. He's a friend. I love him. I love his family. He loves my family. He loves our church. And so I think there's a need for networks, and I think there's a need for denominations. What I was, I guess, embedded in the question I asked was my own biases and concerns. It's more concerns that I have of how quickly we moved away from, as you would say, historically, like Black denominations. I do think that there is something about being known. We shifted so quickly because the money was there. Like, let's just be honest. Let's keep it 100. Like we shifted so quickly to networks because we were able to be put before people we would have not been put before, and get money that we would have not been able to get, because denominations, they don't provide, for the most part, they don't provide the resources that the network would provide. Go ahead, bro.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Pastor Charlie and I talk about this a lot, and we put it in the framework of record labels, right? So like, your dad grew up in a time where he probably remembers race records, right? What they call race records. So like, it's a difference in Motown operating and all the Black people know you, and then the Temptation saying like, no, I don't want all the Black people to know me.
That's
I want
right.
everybody to know me.
That's right.
And I know
that's such a good analogy.
Incomplete analogy, but that's sort of what happened.
Yeah.
Where we said like, okay, like the Motown is just not enough. We
Yeah.
want to reach, far more people. And how
Yeah.
do we do that? Well, this bigger denomination
it.
or this bigger network can help.
Well, it's not only such a perfect analogy, it's such a Charlie analogy. That's something he would come up with. It's brilliant. And it's true. It's accurate. I'll wrap up my thought by saying, again, I think there's a need for both, but there is something beautiful in the historical Black church. There's something beautiful in the in the denominations that have been birthed from these Black churches, historical Black churches. And I think there's beauty in that. Do not run from that and run toward networks because the money looks shiny. Well, that's like prostituting church planting. Like let's not do that, right? Let's be faithful, and you dance with the one that brought you to the party. And so I don't believe in hiding the networks that you're a part of. I don't believe in or the denominations you're a part of. But I would just say, when you get far into this, we started out our church, and I automatically was thinking self-sustaining and thinking how do we get out of church plant mode and just be a church in the neighborhood that loves the neighborhood and the neighborhood loves us. How do we get there? And I'll tell you this, once you get into those, like you get some years into the church, you will be grateful for denominations. You will be grateful for a church that has sent you, because when you do fall and you do mess up, which happens, you have someone to correct you. A lot of times networks is brothers trying to correct brothers. You need a father to walk in and say, that's wrong. You're wrong. Repent to your church, repent to your wife. Like that's what we need. And oftentimes I just don't often see that with networks. I'm not down to networks. I think there's a need for them, but I just get concerned when people run so fast the opposite way, which when I started planting in 2013, 14, 15, that's exactly what everybody was doing. And it's not healthy.
Yeah, we did the same thing. Like our first thought when we were moving out to launch, or at least plant, not to launch, we almost immediately said we're not going to have any denominational affiliation, just because we thought, oh, that would actually strengthen our cause. And then 2 years in, we were like, man, I think we need a denomination. Like I think we need it, and we're still non-denominational. We don't have a denominational affiliation. We have friends, right? But you're right. Like sometimes you need that group of people, that family of people who say like, we know them, we love them, we care for them, we can correct them. Ideally, I feel like networks should be for the processes and the systems of a church.
Executive side.
And denominations should be for the theological and the and even like the familial parts of
community. Yeah.
The communal. Yeah, that's a better word. The communal aspects of a church. So like the first person calling you should probably be in your denomination, and not your network. Your network should be like, hey, we are churches that are similar, and these systems have worked, so let's share these systems, let's share these resources. Where like your bishop is calling you from your denomination, like, Byron, I ain't seen you in a while. Like, what's going on?
That's it. And we need that. And we need that, man. We need that. It's missing. I've kind of been out of the beginning stages of church planting for a bit now, so I'm not as close to how guys are like getting off the ground. But what you just said, I'll put a period on this, man. Unless you want to continue the conversation by just saying, like we need that. We need both, because we do need resources. Like, let's be clear, and it's not that the denomination can't provide the resources. Oftentimes they can't provide it at the amount and the pace that the network can provide it. But don't if a network is good, they'll allow you to kind of work in both and see themselves as an executive side, while you're getting some of the theology and the missiology and the church structure and the church government. You're getting that a little bit more from the denomination. I would just say pay attention to your bylaws as well. Like, who's on your bylaw, who can fire you, you need to know. And it can't just be all network. I think you have to add into that team some of that, the church you've been a part of, the denomination you come from or you're a part of, like bring that into it as well. And I think they both can coexist.
Yeah, I agree. I am going to extend the conversation just a little bit.
Yeah. It's your show, bro.
And I'm writing this down in my mental Rolodex. Dance with the person who brought you to the party. Like, guys, please. Like, I am not a part of a denomination, but one conversation that I have grown to actually dislike is when I talk to new church planters and they tell me about their denominational affiliation begrudgingly. Like, they're like, yeah, I had to get with them because they're a part of this is the church that sent me out and they're a part of this, so I had to do this. It's like, no, man, like, take joy in the fact that you belong to that
100%.
And especially if they love you and care for you, right?
Yeah.
And if they don't love you and care for you, then maybe there's room to look for a group of people who do love you and care for you. And quite honestly, I would love to see some of us. I might lead the charge. I don't know. I would like to see some of us go back to some of these smaller black denominations, historically black denominations, and just be brothers with them, and allow for them to kind of pour a lot of stuff they got going on, on what we're doing, right? I think that would be a blessing. So
100%.
To kind of shift a little bit, man, Epiphany Brooklyn, right? I'm really, really not trying to just overdo it, but I have to say, y'all are one of my favorite churches, man. Like, I watch everything y'all do. I copy a whole lot of stuff, or at least try to.
Wow.
And I think y'all are, seriously, I think you all are one of the most creative churches I have ever seen, right?
Wow.
There's one thing that just impresses me with pastors, leaders, church planners, and churches is when people say, we know who we are and we are going to go full out in who we are. And every time I see y'all, I'm like, goodness, I would have never thought to put the platform in the middle of the worship
room.
Yeah. I remember when y'all posted about the new building and my wife was like, yo, we gotta paint our building black. Like, our building has to be black like this. Right? So man, spend a couple minutes just telling us about Epiphany Brooklyn that you get to pastor, and what's the dynamic there? Where does the creativity come from? And I have some assumptions, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on all that.
I'm gonna give you my thoughts, but man, I want to know your assumptions too. But man, truth be told, man, if I wasn't pastoring and I was living in Brooklyn, I would want to be a part of Epiphany. And here's why. It is not strategy. I promise it's not, man. It's not necessarily creativity, although I think that plays a role. Man, it is Matthew 16, the Lord is building his church. And in doing so, there's a community of people that are genuinely growing. We're in a season right now that we've been using the language of revival because that's what we're seeing. Byron, I'm not kidding, man. Last week we baptized 13 people last week. And it's kind of, we do them every month now. And the weekend before that, the month before that, I think it was in the double digits. We're consistently seeing people in a month go from death to life. And it's crazy. So I think that's the joy for us. The metric of success for us is seeing dead hearts made alive to the beauty of Christ. We're seeing that. And that's a prayer, man. That's been a prayer for since we first started the church. But I'll be honest, I do think we do put a lot of emphasis on the aesthetics of the church. And I don't mean the aesthetics of the sanctuary. I think our presentation, it's kind of what you do here, Byron. Bro, you look crystal clean, man. Your mic sounds good. The camera is good. I stepped my game up because I knew I was coming on with you. And, it's because you care, right? You care because it matters. We live in a digital age, a tech age where I think the stuff that we do, it does matter. When I first started planting, Byron, I remember we were coming from a culture that, and rightfully so, was very pound the pavement and see people in the neighborhood give their life to the Lord. And attractional ministry was almost a dirty word. It was like, don't do attractional because, how you get them is how you got to keep them. And so if you use, a lot of lights and smoke, and that's how you got to keep them. And then when we started the church, we did our first vision night in June so we got commissioned in May of 2015. We did our first gathering June of 2015. We did another one in July. And then from the door, we immediately from the door said, how do we do this, but do it different? We don't want to look the same. We don't want to do the same. We kind of want to do something different. And I'll never forget, man, the season of getting comfortable with what I would call attractional ministry, where word of mouth becomes a very important part of how you gather people at the church. We've ran away from it, man. It was like, man, go down on the street and share the gospel. And you should do that. There's a place for that. In New York, that don't work. In New York, you can't sit on a corner and preach because everybody's going to look at you like you're crazy. So that is not the avenue which we chose. What we said was, man, how do we create an atmosphere that people want to bring their friends? And so what does that mean? It means investment into creativity. We do have a team of people. I don't know what your assumptions are, but I can tell you this: all the creative ideas do not come from me. It is a team of people. My wife is way more creative than I am. In fact, the sign that's outside, the painting of the outside, we painted it black. It says "Hello Brooklyn," and the name of the church is smaller than the "Hello Brooklyn." That was all intentional, and it was a vision my wife had for. Normally you see the name of the church and the pastor's name and, the senior pastor's name, you see all that as big as they on the, she was like, how about we just be inviting and put something that is welcoming to the community? So she had the whole vision for the outside, but even the inside, man, there's a team of people. We have some very, very creative people that work at Google, that work at Facebook, that work at Meta, or whatever it is. And we have very creative people. And so they actually bring their creativity here. And so because they bring their creativity here, we're able to have crazy brainstorming meetings and just think about different things on how to present the church in a way in 2023 that makes sense, but at the same time, keeping the core, which is the message of Christ. We keep that center, we keep that core, but the aesthetics and the method on how we attract people, we try to have a little bit of creativity with it.
Yeah, man, I can definitely see that. And at first I had questions about it, but what you just said explains a lot, and it's a part of what I thought through. I think when I first started in church planting, I can resonate with that idea. Man, we got a pound of concrete and we got to go hard and blah blah blah, and we did that. And it's like, man, this is a different day, right?
Yeah.
And I don't make excuses for. Sometimes we just don't have effective ways to evangelize and be missional. I just got to put that out there. But for most people, the ground is just not as fertile as what some people think it is. So, I love the idea of making a comfortable space that people want to bring their friends to, saying hey, you gotta check this out. And a bit of that is attractional. But I've seen y'all doing it in a way that is, I think, I don't have a great word to describe it, but it's impressive to me. And, I have visions on stuff from movies and stuff like that. And I can imagine y'all saying man, we make this look good. We're gonna do what we're doing in praising Jesus, seeing people come to know Jesus and walk with him, baptizing them, seeing them go from spiritual death to spiritual life. And we're doing it in a way that looks good. And there's nothing wrong with that. Right. So I appreciate all that y'all do. I'm a creative buff, so I'm like, dog,
I can tell.
I should have done that. I know I could have come up with that. But the assumptions I spoke of earlier were just you all wanting to be relevant, and maybe relevant's not the right word, but you all being a church for the neighborhood, right? It's in Brooklyn, this is what it looks like, and this is what it smells like, and this is what Brooklyners act like, and this is what they like to see and like to hear. And you all being a couple blocks away from the Barclays and being where you are, you can't just be the church from Manhattan or the church from Virginia or the church from, Memphis or whatever. Like, you have to actually be a church for your block. And I think a lot of people miss out on a lot because they're trying to be the church across town and not the church for their block.
Man, can I speak to that, man? Because it's so good. It's so good, man. We have let me just say we have not always done it well. I think there have been times where I've certainly had to repent. I've had to correct the church because we took cultural relevancy to the point of carnality. And I'll never forget one time, this was during the pandemic, when we weren't able to meet inside and we were meeting out in the community, and we try to do things that the community would resonate with and feel and hear like a welcoming tone, and then allow the gospel to penetrate. But there was one time we had music playing, and I don't know who picked the playlist. I really don't. So I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, but somebody picked the playlist before service, and Justin Bieber's Yummy started playing. Yeah. And bro, I was convicted. But that's taking cultural relevancy to the point of carnality. And this is the church. We got mothers sitting in here, right? We got kids here, and that's not an appropriate song to be playing before a church service. And it wasn't like the community, that was us. We were playing that. And so we haven't done it well, is what I want to say. But let me just say, man, to the cultural relevancy piece, and this is not like my ideas. This honestly was discipled in me through Dr. Mason. That was one of the core convictions at the church in Philly. And so when we planned here, we were like, man, what does a church look like that's relevant for Brooklyn? I mean, the greatest rappers have come from here. I would argue Biggie is the greatest rapper of all time. That's just me. I'm a little old school with it. But you could say Jay-Z. Nas is in Queens. Is it Queens or Bronx? But yeah, Queens. Yeah. So you can like think through the people that come to the church. Like, man, the church has to have a way that is relevant to, I'm talking non-believers that don't know the Lord that walk into your church. How does it make sense for them? And it's Paul at the Areopagus, bro. It's Paul at the Areopagus looking at the unknown statue saying, oh, let me make this make sense for you. And then, bro, even in that, he quotes to them their own Stoic philosophers. In him we live, move, and have our being. Well, that's scripture now, but it was a Stoic philosopher. So he was quoting their poets, their rappers. So we try to be very relevant. It is very common for me to quote a rapper or someone who's relevant in the culture right now. It's very normal for me to use that as a beeline to get them to Christ. And I try my best to do it. And I think our creativity revolves around that as well. It's a core value for a reason for us.
Couple of quick questions I have for you. What does Epiphany look like right now? Like, as far as people, as far as like the makeup of the church, what does Epiphany look like for you?
Yeah, it's changing as everybody is changing post pandemic, but I think we're predominantly a young church, 92% in our 20s, so like a young church. We are starting to see generational diversity. We have two services here. We have a 9:30 service and 11:30. Our 9:30 service I think I'm not gonna say a more mature, because the second service will get mad at that. They're an older crowd. Our first service is an older crowd. We have like mothers that come to that service, and so we're starting to see a little bit of generational diversity. Primarily Black. That's the neighborhood we're in. And we don't shy away from that. We're predominantly Black. There is some minority mixed in there. And even when I say Black, that's not just like African American. We got Caribbeans here. We got Nigerians here. We got people from Ghana here. Like we have Hispanics and Koreans. So it's not just one type of person of color, but predominantly I think that's where we that's who we attract. And so I think it's it's the music. We try to put a lot of focus on good quality music, because again, that's cultural relevancy here for Brooklyn. We also put a lot of focus in the preaching on, I think, what makes sense for this neighborhood. So we're to answer your question in a shorter manner, Yeah, young, trying to be more diverse. Definitely a season of revival. So non-believers are now giving their lives to the Lord, and yeah, I would say predominantly minority, predominantly Black.
I love that. I love that. Allow for me to get to be a bit controversial. Maybe this is not controversial at all,
Okay.
but maybe it is. Um, you mentioned earlier that you are a part of a network. You're a part of Orchard Group. A lot of friends in Orchard Group, or at least a lot of people who I know, who I like respect. And a friend of mine planted in San Francisco. He was with Orchard Group, and Dr. Ernest Grant. I gotta call him Doctor. He
Doctor.
gets
Yeah,
on me every
definitely.
time I don't.
Archbishop.
And one conversation I've had with him and a couple other guys is, man, it takes money to plant a church, right? And I think Orchard Group does a good job of kind of equipping y'all in that way. What would you say to the person who is like, no, you don't really need, that much to plant a church. You just need to gather some people and get some food and you'll be fine. Like, how do you feel about, I'm just gonna be honest, like having the bag to be able to plant a church?
Yeah, I don't think it's everybody's story. I think if you if you go through church history and look at some of the most impactful and even I would say growing and have like really flourished churches, they were not churches that came out of networks with a huge bag. They were people who started in the living room with 5 people and got blue on it. And so you don't have to. In fact, I think when you talked about creativity, I think the most creative seasons, even for us, the most creative seasons were when we had little, when we didn't have, because it forces you to think different than if you have, if you have the bag. It is helpful. It is helpful. God has been really, really gracious through to supply a lot of resources, specifically through the people who make up Orchard Group. When we first started, we were Orchard Group, Acts 29, and North American Mission Board. And so we had all three. We're not Acts 29, not because of any issues, just because it didn't make sense for us in this season. So I'll leave that alone. Then we're primarily Orchard Group. That is who we rock with. We don't hide that. And so financially, God has been good through them. But yeah, I want your listeners to know you don't have to have a sugar daddy church in order to be effective in ministry. What you need is this Bible. You need some vision. You need to pray that God saves some folk and that they will become deacons and elders. And you have no clue how God can blow on it. And again, just read through the New Testament, man. Sometimes they had resources. Sometimes Paul was asking for money because they didn't have it, and I think God can use both.
I love it. Perfect answer, by the way. Perfect answer. I do think you need the bag. I need the bag right now. So
okay. Listen, man, ask for it, man. Yeah. Ask for it.
Man, speaking of that, man, I just want to give again another shout out, man. About a year ago, we were praying about a building, and a friend of yours, I would say, reached out to us via Twitter. Pastor Jordan Rice. Hopefully he'll be on the podcast.
Another bishop, another archbishop.
Yeah,
get Jordan on, man. Jordan is great, man.
Yeah. I can't wait to get him on. But he reached out and was like, "Hey, man, just let me know like what you need." And I have a group of guys who may have some interest in this. And about a year ago, man, the Rise Fund, which comes out of Orchard Group, I believe, y'all blessed Identity Church with a gift that helped us actually acquire a building. We're still paying off the building. We hadn't purchased it completely, but you all's gift allowed for us to at least start the conversation and write our names on the agreement. And hopefully, prayerfully, by August of this year, we will own the building 100%, man. So tell the people a little bit about Rise Fund too.
Man, first of all, I'm so excited about that. I know we don't got much more time, but I want to hear more about that because that was the goal of Rise Fund. So I'll make this real quick. Rise Fund, honestly was birthed out of some really painful conversations that Brent and I were having, specifically in 2020, with all of the unrest that we saw in the with race issues throughout the country. And I begin to really, really be grieved and challenged in some ways and pressed in some ways. And again, I have this relationship with Brent that I can just be completely vulnerable and honest. And he, it's heard, and I know it's heard. And so we were having some really tough conversations. And through that, we came up with this idea of creating a reparations fund. Now, we don't call it that. It's called Rise Fund, but it is in every sense a somewhat of a reparations fund. The funding is only for black pastors that are either trying to acquire some type of property or have someone underneath them that they are kind of what we were talking about earlier. They are kind of ready to send out or prepare or develop. And so Rise Fund is Orchard Group coming together with some of their donors, putting money into an account, and then saying to me, Jordan Rice, and Watson Jones, you guys oversee the account and give it out to the people that you think need the money. And so because of that, we're actually adding to that board. It's not just going to be us three. I don't want to lay out all of it, but we are adding to that to make it more comprehensive. If you don't know about it, it's because we haven't really launched out yet, but give it some time. Over the next few months, you'll start to see more and more about Rise Fund. And let me just say this, man, that the resources that you received they did exactly what we were hoping it would do, which was help you along your way and give you access. You don't have to pay it back. It is funding that has come from some generous people that want to just give it out to you guys. So, and let me just say, it's cross denominational. I sat on the call with Bishop Bishop Drew Sheard, Kojic. Let me say that again. I sat on a call with Bishop Drew Sheard over Kojic, and we were able to provide. No, it's not because of me. No, I didn't mean like that. It's because we had money that we wanted to give to Kojic, and so I was able to sit on the call with him, and we were able to give him money. We were able to give you money. Same thing with Charlie Dates and what he's doing out in Progressive. Watson Jones was able to coordinate resources there. There have been plenty of people, but it's individuals, but it's also people who are like heads of denominations and networks that we're able to funnel money through so that people can get blessed by it. And there's money there, man. So it's not my money. We just oversee and steward what God has put in it.
Praise God, man. Well, yeah, it's been a blessing to us, man. It gave us hope. And being able to sit down across from some people who were trying to sell the building and say like, hey, we have this amount that we can give you today. Like that really moved the needle. So
you walk with a different level of swag when you got the money in the bag already.
Now I got a lot of confidence. I done made a lot of deals with no money. They don't know it, but man, when you got a little money,
yeah, you negotiate different.
Yeah, man. Well, look, man, I don't want to take too much of your time, so we're gonna make a turn. I always end our conversation. It's not an interview; it's a conversation. I always end our conversation with some quick fire questions, and then I'll give you some space on the end if you'd like to talk about anything that's pressing on your side. But man, you become a little popular recently on TikTok and Instagram because you and your wife were on that. I forgot the name of the account, but I'm like,
Cute Meats.
Hey, we know them. Like, so like, man, and since y'all have become, you have more eyes on you. I think more people are just kind of paying attention to your marriage and all that stuff like that. Quick question: what is your favorite date night with you and your wife?
Like a specific one, or like what
like if you're thinking date night, what is the thing that you're like, yeah, we like to do this?
Got you. Yeah, we're gonna eat because that's what we do. We are foodies, but we really like a specific. We have a very, very, very high palate when it comes to food, and that's not bougie. It's just it's whatever city we're in. We're looking for really, really good food, and sometimes that's Mama's Kitchen, and sometimes that is a Michelin star restaurant. So honestly, for us, it's just we're gonna eat well. We like to move, we like to walk, we like to get out, we like to ride bikes. And so sometimes that, a date for us will be walking. Sometimes the date will be, if we're in another city, we will rent bikes or scooters, and we'll just get out. And so yeah, food and something active, I think, is our thing.
I love it, man. You said you are a Biggie fan. You at least said Biggie's the best rapper of all time. Are you willing to stick with that?
Without question. I have no, I'm fully confident in that statement.
Fully confident that the Notorious B.I.G. is the greatest rapper of all time. What is your favorite Biggie song? Don't look it up. I see you on your phone.
No. That was it. I got a text. Probably Juicy and Hypnotize.
Oh man, he's not a real Biggie fan, guys.
Oh, why you say that?
You take the two most well-known songs from Biggie, and those are your favorite.
They discipled me. They raised me.
All right. I dig that. Man, New York's one of my favorite cities. This is gonna be kind of long, but each of my kids get to pick a place that we can go when they turn 13. New York is where we're going 2 years from now.
Wow.
I'm gonna stop by Brooklyn. I'm gonna be in Brooklyn for a little bit. Where do I need to eat in Brooklyn while I'm there?
Yeah, man, there's plenty of places in Brooklyn. I think don't just limit yourself to Brooklyn. I think New York has just really good food in general. But if it's breakfast, there's a place in Brooklyn called Sundays in Brooklyn is what it's called. I think that's what it's called. Sundays in Brooklyn. They have really good like smothered biscuit. You also can go to Sweet Chicks, which Nas is a part owner of Sweet Chicks as well. If you get outside of here, there's some spots in the city, like a little bit outside. There's a place called Aurora. It's an Italian spot. It's probably Italianized. Like we know the owners just because we go there so much. So I would say there as well. If you're looking for pizza, which and Chicago people, you need to hear me. You don't have pizza. That's lasagna. We have pizza here in New York. And so if you're looking for pizza, I think Jillian's right off of High Street is good. That Prince Street pizza is a little thick and greasy, but it's legit. So it's a few spots, man. Man, if you hit me up in time and you got a few times for little people, I'll take you to some spots,
I'm gonna
man.
let you know, man.
Okay.
One thing, last time I was in New York, it's been over 10 years now, actually. And I think we hit 7 different pizza spots, and I enjoyed literally every single one. I was like, yo, this is dope, because I'm a big pizza guy. So
there's a spot called Miss Ida's. I think that's how you say it. It's ADA, I think, though. Miss Ida. Anyway, we went there this week. Food is incredible. It's like a smaller plates, kind of sharing size. So you got to order like 5 or 6 plates. If it's just you and your wife, if it's the kids, you got to order more. But it's good, man. Yeah, New York has really good food. Really good food.
I agree. I also say New York's the first place I had authentic Italian, like white tablecloth, 7 servings, wine. It's the first place. I was like 18 years old. Blew my mind.
Yeah, Italian food in New York is different. It's different.
Yeah. Last question. And then if you have anything else, you can throw that in. But the last question is, man, we love recommendations for this podcast. And I know you have connections with quite a few people. If there are some people that you would say they have to be on this podcast, who would those people be?
Is this limited to pastors?
No, not really.
I think the world of, I'm trying to think of who. Okay, so it's not that I don't have anybody. I'm trying to narrow it down. You're getting Brian Laritz on next week, so that's great. I think you need to get Dates on here. If you can get Charlie Dates on here, I think that would be incredible. Have you got Dr. Mason on? Because of course I'm gonna throw him in there.
Dr. Mason has not been on yet. What I'm trying to do is get all of his sons and grandsons and then be like, come on. Doc,
then get Yoda on. Okay, yeah. I got you. Yeah. I of course I would say him. I probably put him as the top if you could. But then I also think I love people like like Steven Chandler down in Baltimore. I just think he's cool at how he does it. I love the Jordan Rice, man. James Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
It's my dude, man. These are solid dudes, man. Solid dudes. Let me go outside of church planting just a little bit. Lisa Fields would be great to get on.
Yeah. We're trying
Lisa
to get
Fields
Lisa
would be
right
great. Yeah, Lisa Fields would be great to get on. Akimity would be good to get on.
Okay.
Yeah, she's dope, man. So yeah, it's several people, man. But yeah, you guys are. I love the vibe, man. I love where you guys are moving towards, and I hope your listeners are plugged in each week, because you guys are dropping some really good content, man. And it's normal to this normal conversation, but it's profound, man. And I'm not talking about this one. I mean the stuff that I've watched. It's been good, man.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate you. Well, look, I think it's a great conversation. You already said it. We got to have plenty more of these. Hopefully, we can have some off of the mic, and also if it be something we need to do, get back on and do another one. Right?
Yeah, let's do it.
Any last words from you? Anything else you got?
Nah, man. Just I really hope that, especially the pastors, just if I could say a word to them for a second, like, you're in the trenches, you're doing it. Really love your Bibles, man. It's just not something you preach from. Like it's something we live by and we submit under. And so if I could say one thing, man, two things to the pastors that are out there, or just those that are in ministry, maybe you're not a lead pastor. Love your Bibles, really preach Jesus, really talk Jesus, but also back that up with some real character. Be a person of character, be a person of integrity, because I just think, the world needs to see a good representation, and we're tired of seeing, sorry, I'm getting text messages. We're tired of seeing the circus and candy that is on social media. Let's break the algorithms of the dysfunction with some real healthy men and women that are really serious about loving Jesus. So I'll leave with that.
Listen, I don't think anything else needs to be said. Thank y'all for tuning into this conversation. Don't forget, if you liked it, like the video, go ahead and subscribe. Go and follow Pastor Brandon Watts. Go and follow Epiphany Brooklyn. And as you're doing that and you're living all of your life, remember to live all of your life in Jesus Christ. God bless.